E.T. Phone Home. Yes, I will accept my Oscar now for saying one of the greatest lines of all time in the most perfect way possible. Clearly, I can't. I'm just the greatest. What can I say? No, I'm kidding. That was pretty terrible. But anyways, here we are talking another flashback review movie. This is a series that I was for the longest time did once a week, but unfortunately I had been quite busy, so I haven't had time to go and do these movies. So I've missed a lot of anniversaries, but I have to talk about this movie because this movie is truly special. It's iconic. It actually cemented an already royalty style director in Steven Spielberg, who had actually at this time had only done like 4 or 5 films, including classics like Jaws and Close Encounters and Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, how more kind of classic can you be when it comes to royalty and directing? But this is a movie that for what it's worth is one of the most famous as well as one of the greatest films of all time. It's a movie that was actually the highest grossing film for a long time, to be fairly honest, probably almost 10 years before it got supplanted. It's a movie that has some star-making turns in it. It has one of the most adorable aliens in it. It has one of the most interesting plot lines and storytelling aspects from Melissa Matheson, who unfortunately passed away, quite young. But it's a movie that I consider perfect. There is no flaws in this movie. I mean, it may date itself with some of the way people dress and the Walkmans and the way the costumes and stuff like that. But as you know, we're of course talking about E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, and it's a movie that really just it's interesting to watch it even today because this is what I would call classic storytelling in its own right. It's a movie that follows the very simple 3-act structure. It's a movie that introduces us to our main characters pretty early. It introduces us to E.T. the Extraterrestrial himself pretty early. It has cinematography by Alvin DeMeo, who of course worked with Spielberg on like Color Purple and Empire of the Sun. So it is absolutely fantastic to look at, even though it is a very 80s movie. It has a timeless feel to it, and it's a film that I think will go down as a film that is actually important, or actually, I guess you could say it's already considered important because it's in the National Registry for films and television. But it's a film. Doesn't matter how many times you watch it, you will actually find something interesting, something new. The older you get, the more you understand the jokes that are played, which are very adult in a lot of aspects. You understand the heart that's being played. If you have kids, you could show them this film and they will absolutely be riveted, and they'll absolutely fall in love with E.T. It has child performances that are some of the most awe-inspiring things you'll ever see. It took a story which was very simple about a stranded creature or alien or human being and found a way to not only make it endearing and thought-provoking and sweet and good-natured that it falls in it's like the 4-quadrant perfect movie. It really is. Like, you can watch this as an adult and find something, like I said, watch this as a kid and find something, like I said, and you could just everything about this movie works. And this movie has been talked to death. I mean, it's one of the most important movies ever made, but it's a movie that really is strikes a heart, especially with me as an individual that loves film and movies and entertainment. I talk about a lot of these films like Basketball or Cloak and Dagger, which had Henry Thomas in it, or Forrest Gump or Truman Show. They're truly special films, but there is something truly iconic about watching a young kid, especially when you're a young kid, because like I said, in 92, I was enthralled with what this movie was, and watching this kid who was a normal kid, and he has normal, siblings, and he has a normal mom, even though the dad is in Mexico, which is, if you watch it as an adult, is really depressing, to be fairly honest. You don't really understand as a kid what exactly the dynamic of the mother and the kids are. You know that the mother, when you're watching as a kid, feels very domineering and forceful and angry, but she's also loving and very good natured. And the reason for that is her husband left her to be with some woman in Mexico, and the children don't understand the concept behind that. They know the father's gone, they know that he's left them, even though they probably do see him. But you don't get that kind of stuff when you're a kid. You just see a couple kids angry at their mom, and even Elliot, who goes and washes the dishes, is very angry at the mom, angry at his brother just for all this stuff. But when you watch this as an adult, and I've watched this just recently, I watch this like 4 or 5 times a year because I love it so much. You understand and kind of sympathize with the mother more than the kids. This is what I talk about when it comes to four quadrant movies, because it's really just a creative way of telling a very adult story in the hearts of children and of course the mother. And then on top of that, you have the NASA government trying to chase down this alien to kind of learn about it and trying to save it. And that is what's really interesting about those characters, including Peter Coyote, who plays keys. He plays the jingling key guy. And at first, when you're a kid, you're watching this movie and you think this is like the enemy. You think NASA's like the big baddie. It's actually kind of horrifying and scary as a kid when you watch like the astronauts come through the house. But when you grow up, once again, like I compare the children to the human aspects of this movie, especially the adult side. When you watch it as an adult, you realize that these guys are not bad people. They are individuals that are trying to keep the truth from the public, which doesn't make any sense. You shouldn't do that. But they are also human beings, and you watch Peter Coyote's character, and you watch all these individuals, and yes, they aren't like the nicest people in the world, but they are quite fascinating individuals. Peter Coyote in this movie is just absolutely fascinating to watch because he's an individual that feels for this character, of E.T.'s character. He feels for the young kids. He feels for the mother. He's an individual that is just trying to do good, and you don't see that as a kid. You see somebody who's very creepy and crazy, and when this movie starts out, when E.T.'s landed, he gets stranded, because his ship flies off. It's a weird thing to think about as you get older and you watch it in a different light. But when you come to like the children's aspect of this story, and when you, like I said, when you watch it as an adult, you kind of like question what the kids are doing. You kind of question the mother a little bit because you watch like Robert MacNaughton and Henry Thomas and Drew Barrymore, who are the main characters, and of course C. Thomas Howell's in this movie, and so on and so forth. And they mean well. They absolutely mean well in this movie. They mean to take care of this alien, to take care of him from the bad guys, the NASA government or whoever, and they're trying to do it in all the lovable aspects that they possibly can. But what's interesting about it is the creature is a creature. It's a physical being, and they're hiding it, but they're not doing it in the right way possible. They're trying to force this creature to live in the world that he doesn't need to be living in. And on top of everything, Henry Thomas's Elliot character starts to have a connection, like a bond with, of course, the E.T. character. What really makes this story really interesting and works so well, like I said, when it comes to four quadrants, is just how good the cast really is. I've already talked about Peter Coyote. Dee Wallace is absolutely fantastic as the mom who just has to deal with like all sides of trying to raise kids as well as the husband leaving, which is scary to think about, and that's why it's kind of the idea of what she's going through and how she has to like juggle all these responsibilities is really fascinating. So when the story kind of plays out near the end, you see just a mother who realizes her kids were not doing a bad thing, but maybe just kind of not doing the thing that they should do when it comes to keeping secrets and stuff like that. But then you have the kids. And I've already mentioned the kids who, even though they're doing the right thing, they're doing it for all the wrong reasons, to be fairly honest. But the kids in this movie are a perfect example of how good of Steven Spielberg is as a director. Any movie that has kids in it, there's a reason his movies work when it comes to kids and young kids. Even if you look at Hook, which is not considered a very good movie, the kid performances are absolutely fantastic. And it's just Steven Spielberg is his ability to direct kids to get honest and truthful performances out of the kids, to get really just sweet and energetic performances out of the kids. Think about working with really young people like Henry Thomas and of course Drew Barrymore. These are two individuals that are like 5 or 6 years old, and I think Henry Thomas is like 10 or 11 years old in this movie. Having to have all that weight on their shoulders, especially Henry Thomas, to be the lead star of this movie, to have to deal with all the kind of emotions that especially when he starts making the connection with E.T. himself, and just everything about it. It's amazing that the movie works as well as it does, because you don't think a performance from a kid actor would work. You really don't. But because of how Steven Spielberg is able to mold and rotate his characters and just kind of get down to their level and go, we want you to kind of do this and we want you to do that, but also be playful about it, also laugh about it. You've seen the behind the scenes footage of Spielberg working with Henry Thomas and just how Steven Spielberg feels like a kid himself. It's an amazing thing to watch, and you even see it with like Short Round with Ke Quan and Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. You see it with that young kid, and of course Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's what truly makes Spielberg special when it comes to being a director, and I found that fascinating. I really did. You watch Henry Thomas's performance, and it's truly natural. It really is the way he interacts with E.T., the way he interacts with his brother, the Robert MacNaughton Michael character, the way he interacts with Drew Barrymore's Gertie character. You watch like how they interact with this E.T. puppet character, which sometimes it was a person in a suit. It's got to be hard as a kid to not only keep on point and keep on pace with a movie that has a lot of strenuous things to a kid that could drive him insane, to be fairly honest. And thank God Henry Thomas and to an extent Drew Barrymore didn't turn out worse than they could have. But just watching their performances it's awe-inspiring. It really is. It's almost kind of makes you a little jealous that there are young kids that are just such great performers, and you sit here and go, man, I could never do that. I really could. It's not only the strength of what Steven Spielberg can do, but it's also the strength of how good Henry Thomas was as an actor at the time. You can tell they probably did a lot of takes to just kind of get the motions in check for Henry Thomas. And Drew Barrymore, to an extent, is giving a very kid performance, but she is doing it very, very well. Of course, she is the daughter of, I think, John Barrymore or something like that, or the granddaughter or whatever. But it really is. It really is a remarkable thing. And like I said, I really don't need to even talk about the synopsis of this movie, because it literally is about an alien that gets stranded. A young kid finds the alien. He tries to protect him. NASA wants to come in and study the alien. There's a whole family dynamic with divorce and the kind of running away of the father, and the kind of allowing and letting go of one of your friends who has to move on to wherever he has to move on to, which is what makes that ending so special, to be fairly honest, because you watch a really honest portrayal of somebody who is losing someone special to them, or the person special to them is going to move on to a different place, or death and stuff like that. You watch, of course, Drew Barrymore, who's really sad and she's crying. She has the flower. Like I said, Henry Thomas is crying. Everybody's crying because it's such a special ending. I mean, I'm sure when they were filming that, they were just like, an amazing way to think. Melissa Matheson's script is just, it's awe-inspiring to watch and to listen to and to read and everything about it. I mean, I've read the script before. It's just, it is perfect to read. You feel like you're an emotional drain by the end of that movie, but that's what makes it so perfect. I love this movie so very, very much. I really do. And I'm not the only one. Everybody you'll hear on Twitter and Facebook and all these places when June 11th, 1982, talking about E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. And I think probably one of the most famous stories to come out of here is, of course, the Reese's Pieces story. Of course, we know the whole thing behind that. But I really love that story. I love that story. I love the Star Wars toy story, because it's an idea that a film, until it kind of finds its way out into the audience and becomes a huge hit, these things are kind of miracles, to be fairly honest. The fact that M&M, I think Mars or whoever owns M&M, decided that this movie was going to be a bane and a disaster for them, and so Reese's Pieces came in. The company that owns Reese's Pieces came in. They're like, sure, we'll put our product in your movie. Will you give us a little bit of money, whatever, and as we see, it outsold M&M the year of 1982, because it was in a movie called E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial that made $400 and some odd million when it came out. And it's just, those kind of stories are awesome to read about, because you have to take chances sometimes. And you see it in stuff like Napoleon Dynamite, or The Lord of the Rings, or even Titanic. You just got to give these creators a chance to put their product out there. And I guess because of the money and how much of a gamble it is to make these types of products and film, can ruin lives and get people fired, that I understand why they made that decision. But you have to go in sometimes and go, let me trust the director, let me trust the writer. I'm surprised that M&M Mars decided that they didn't want to do this after Raiders of the Lost Ark and Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I'm surprised they didn't have that much trust in Spielberg and Melissa Matheson and Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall and everybody who worked on this movie. John Williams, who has created one of the most iconic scores of his repertoire of iconic scores. It just baffles my mind. It's the same thing with Fox and of course the Star Wars toy sale stuff. It's like, I know Star Wars was a little more problematic than E.T. I'm sure it was, but you just have to sit here and go, what are you thinking? What are you doing? And that's what makes it such a funny thing to think about. But I mean, we also talk about E.T. himself. He is a, let's just get out of the way. He's a very ugly character. He really has always been. He's short. He's wrinkly. He has long fingers. He points up in the sky and says, "E.T. phone home." He is playing speak and spell. He's getting drunk at beer. It's just a lot of things in the movie that, a lot of things of a character that would not work, and maybe that's why Eminem is like. And then what ends up happening? He becomes one of the most iconic, lovable characters since Baby Yoda. To be fairly honest, I'm sure there's other characters, but you know what I mean. You just have to give credit to where credit's due. This is a chance they took when it came to this character and this creature and this alien. They had this like idea of just like most times, as Spielberg has said, most alien movies are horror films and they're not about lovable creatures. So when you bring a character like in this, even though it's lovable and we know it, without even seeing the character and how iconic it just is still a creepy looking character when it's not moving. But it ends up being because of the passion and nature of the character itself, how it interacts with all the main human characters, the fact that it is very simplified in its like wording and what it can say, the fact that it moves around is joyous and how it moves around and how it has a family, and the family is a good thing to look at and all that good stuff. And with the ship and stuff like that, it's a character that, even though ugly, has beauty on the inside, and when the beauty comes out, it really focuses on a really fun, entertaining character, and that's just a very great thing to see. And I love E.T. You can just give him a hug, and that's when when Elliot gives him a hug at the end, it's just beautiful to watch. I mean, I guess one of the bigger things is this movie was kind of not a traditional hit in a lot of respects. It was a film that, yes, it was Spielberg. Yes, it had a lot of marketing behind it. But if you think about it, this is the year that The Thing and Poltergeist and Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan came out. This is a year where like First Blood came out and stuff like that. So if you really think about it, E.T. was not what you would consider like the biggest known property, the biggest idea and concept to come out that year. It was something that I'm sure they knew after watching it that it had something special, but they never thought this movie would make $400 to $500 million. I'm pretty sure they didn't realize that this movie would become such a global phenomenon that it would be it'd be the highest grossing movie for like almost a decade and so on and so forth. But when you kind of look back on it, it's very similar to like Ghostbusters and Back to the Future and Star Wars. It's a lightning in a bottle type of situation where it just struck the chord with people. It had the right type of storytelling, the right type of crew. It was at the right exact moment. It was a film that just really found its core. It used the idea of just individuals and kind of the idea of family and how bonding can be such a special thing, and just the idea of like an adventure and intrigue and scary natured stuff, and the fact that it could be for adults and for kids with the jokes and humor as well as the storytelling elements. I think it was always destined to be something truly special. I think the fact that Steven Spielberg was directing it gave a lot of people hope. And when this movie released on June 11th, they actually had premieres and, premiere of a film festival, which is crazy to think about a movie this special and this big. It had possible film festivals circuit type of thing. But once that kind of all those things started going out into the ether, it started to get a lot of buzz. Similar to Star Wars, it just became one of those things where it played for a long time in the theater, made a lot of money, and Best Picture nomination, John Williams' iconic score, Spielberg getting director nomination, Melissa Matheson getting I think a screenplay nomination. I think Henry Thomas, to be fairly honest, got gypped out of an Oscar nomination for this movie. I think Peter Coyote should have got an Oscar nomination, including D. Wallace. But in the end, with the fun look at like Yoda and the joke there, and the fact that it's set during Halloween, which is even more awesome because I love Halloween and just the nature there. I think in the end, just the family aspect, the storytelling, the writing, the music, the cinematography, the world that is E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial is once again a 4-quadrant movie, a perfect movie, and one of the greatest movies of all time. For a reason, and I just love it. And what more can you say? It's just a fantastic little film. It's a film that really will, watch 10, 20, 30, 60 years from now, and your grandkids and your grandkids will always love this film, and that's a testament to just the timeless nature of what this film can do. So, but with that said, that is gonna be my take on E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. Happy 40th anniversary to you. It's crazy, once again, 40 years, but I've been waiting a couple years to talk about this film. But anyways, thank you so much. Comments below. I know you've seen this movie a billion times. What is your favorite scene? What is your favorite moment of this movie? Who's your favorite character? Whatever you want to talk about with that. But otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.